The cleaning solution smelled like synthetic lemons and broken promises. I scrubbed at the marble countertop in the kitchen of a townhouse that cost more than I would earn in 15 lifetimes, my hands raw, even through the yellow rubber gloves. 6 a.m. The city outside still dark, the kind of cold November darkness that seeps into your bones and stays there. My knees ached. The uniform, purchased used from a thrift store in Queens because the agency didn't provide them, pulled tight across my shoulders. It had belonged to someone shorter, someone wider. I'd safety pinned the waist to keep the pants from sliding down. The fabric smelled like someone else's fabric softener, a scent I couldn't identify and didn't want to. I used to stand in kitchens like this one as a guest. Not often, maybe twice. Faculty holiday parties at the private school where I taught English literature to teenagers who'd never had to choose between groceries and electricity. I'd worn a borrowed dress. My closest friend Rachel had a better wardrobe and a generous spirit, and I'd held a glass of wine I didn't drink because I was always driving, always responsible, always the one who planned ahead. 3 years ago. Lifetimes ago. The memory surfaced with perfect clarity. Standing near a window, almost identical to this one, my husband Daniel's hand warm on my lower back, his voice low in my ear making some joke about Gatsby and green lights. He'd read the book because I loved it, retained nothing except the parties and the tragedy. I'd laughed anyway. I'd been so happy that night. So unbearably, naively happy. He'd been dead 18 months now. Drunk driver, they said. Daniel's blood alcohol level was 0. The other driver walked away with a broken arm and a DUI he'd never served time for, because his lawyer was better than justice. They didn't tell me about the debts until after the funeral. $340,000. Gambling debts, spread across 7 different online platforms and 2 physical casinos I hadn't known he visited. Daniel had been a high school guidance counselor with a salary of $62,000 a year. He'd been drowning, and I'd never noticed, too busy grading papers and planning lessons and assuming we were safe because we were careful, because we did everything right. The house went first, then the savings account, what little the debts hadn't already consumed. Then my job, because I'd had what the administration delicately called an emotional episode in front of my AP literature class, sobbing so hard while teaching Ophelia's death that the school counselor had to walk me to my car. They'd offered FMLA leave. I'd taken it. When I tried to return, the position had been filled. My hands moved automatically across the marble, wiping away invisible stains. Muscle memory from 6 months of doing this work. I'd applied to teach at public schools, private tutoring companies, anywhere that would let me near a book and a student. Overqualified, they said. Liability risk, they meant. The woman who broke down crying in the middle of Hamlet wasn't someone you trusted with other people's children. So I cleaned houses. The agency, Pristine Home Solutions, a name that promised more than it delivered, paid $11 an hour. No benefits, no sick days. You showed up or you didn't get assignments. I worked doubles whenever they were available, which was most days, Tuesday through Saturday, sometimes Sunday if someone needed post-party cleanup. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled off one glove to check it. Owen's preschool. Reminder that tuition payment is past due. Please contact our office to arrange payment or withdrawal procedures. $450, due 12 days ago. I'd asked for an extension. They'd given me until the end of the week. I had $127 in my checking account. Rent was due in 6 days. We'd eaten rice and canned beans for 11 days straight because Owen needed new sneakers. His old ones had split along the sole, and I couldn't send him to school with cardboard stuffed inside them like some Dickensian orphan. I closed the message without responding and pulled the glove back on. The apartment in Queens was $890 a month for a single room with a bathroom the size of a closet. Owen slept on one side of a shower curtain I'd hung from the ceiling to create the illusion of separate spaces. His side had his small bed, a plastic bin of toys from the Salvation Army, and drawings he'd made taped to the wall. My side had a mattress on the floor and a milk crate that served as a nightstand. He was 4 years old. He asked about his father less frequently now, which somehow hurt more than the constant questions had. The kitchen was finished. I moved to the living room, running the vacuum over carpet that probably cost $200 per square foot. The sound drowned out thought, which was a mercy. I worked until 7:30, then packed my supplies and caught the bus to the next job. Yolanda was waiting at the bus stop on Lexington Avenue. her own cleaning bag slung over one shoulder. She was 40, Dominican, with 3 teenage sons, and the kind of practical wisdom that came from surviving things that should have broken you. "You look like death," she said by way of greeting. "Good morning to you too." "I'm serious, Natalie. You working another double?" "I need the money." "You need sleep. You're gonna collapse in some rich lady's bathroom and then what? Owen ends up in the system while you're in the hospital?" The bus arrived before I had to answer. We climbed on, found seats near the back. The heating didn't work properly. Half was overheated. We ended up in the freezing section. "David called me yesterday," I said quietly. Yolanda's head whipped around. "Daniel's brother? The one who disappeared after the funeral? He wants to meet. Says he wants to be part of Owen's life. After a year and a half of nothing? 14 months. He came around twice right after Daniel died, brought a casserole and a card. Then nothing until about 2 months ago. He started calling, leaving messages. I didn't respond. Why's he pushing now? I don't know. That was a lie. I knew exactly why. Daniel's life insurance policy, $100,000 that I'd assumed would go to creditors, had a specific clause. The debts were his alone, acquired before marriage. The insurance went to Owen as sole beneficiary, held in trust until he turned 18. 500,000, not 100. I'd read the policy wrong in the grief fog after Daniel died. Provided basic coverage, but Daniel had taken out additional private insurance 3 years before he died and never mentioned it. The trust was ironclad. I couldn't touch it. I was listed as trustee, but any withdrawal required court approval and documentation proving the expense directly benefited Owen. David was listed as alternate trustee, a provision from an old will Daniel had made before Owen was born, never updated. If something happened to me, if I was deemed unfit, incapable, dangerous, David could petition for guardianship, and guardians controlled trusts. "Don't meet with him," Yolanda said. "Man ghosts you for over a year. Suddenly wants family time? No, something's wrong. He's Owen's uncle, his only living family besides me." "You're his family. That man is a stranger with shared DNA." My phone buzzed again. I didn't check it. We rode in silence to the next stop. Yolanda got off first. She had a recurring job in a penthouse on Park Avenue, a wealthy older woman who paid cash and sometimes gave Yolanda leftover food from catered events. I continued 3 more stops to my second job of the day. This one was different. The text from the agency had come at 11 p.m. the night before. Special assignment. Estate cleanup post-corporate event. Cash payment, $200 for 4 hours. Address in Westchester. Van pickup at 7 a.m. I'd said yes before reading the full message. $200 meant Owen's medication refill, the asthma inhaler he needed, and insurance no longer covered because I'd lost my job, and the subsidized plan had a 3-month gap in coverage for pre-existing conditions. The van picked up 4 of us from different stops. I didn't know the other women. We didn't talk. The house, mansion really, sat behind iron gates on 3 acres of property, 30 minutes north of the city. Stone facade, tall windows, the kind of understated wealth that didn't need to announce itself. The event had clearly been significant. Empty wine bottles lined the kitchen counters, glasses abandoned on every surface, caterers' trays stacked near the service entrance. 4 hours, the site manager said. She was young, efficient, holding a tablet. Kitchen, dining room, main sitting room, and the upstairs office. Don't touch anything in the bedrooms. Family is still in residence. We split up. I took the upstairs office because no one else wanted stairs. It was quieter up there, isolated. The office was all dark wood and leather, floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a desk that looked hand-carved. Expensive. Everything in this house was expensive in the way that transcended price tags, the kind of wealth that was inherited and maintained and never questioned. I cleaned methodically, emptied the trash, wiped down surfaces, straightened books that had been pulled out and left scattered. The phone rang at 8:43. It sat on the desk. An iPhone in a leather case, screen lighting up with the words "private number." I ignored it, continued dusting. It rang again, same caller. I moved to the windows, started wiping down the glass. Third call, same number. My hand reached for it before my brain caught up. Years of teaching, of answering the school phone during planning periods, of always being available, because what if it was important? What if a parent needed to reach me? What if I picked up? Hello? Silence. Then, breathing. Then a woman's voice, accent I couldn't place. European. Eastern European, maybe. "Marco? I'm sorry, this isn't. Tell him his wife is alive." The words came fast, Urgent, almost whispered. Tell him Sofia is alive. Tell him to stop looking. They'll kill me if he doesn't stop. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone still pressed to my ear, my heart suddenly loud in the silence. The door opened behind me. I turned. 3 men stood in the doorway. The one in front was tall, broad-shouldered, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my car had before I sold it. Dark hair, darker eyes, a face that would have been handsome if it wasn't currently arranged in an expression of cold fury. He looked at me, looked at the phone in my hand. 8 seconds of absolute silence. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, dangerously quiet. What are you doing in my office? My mouth opened. No sound came out. The phone felt like it weighed 20 pounds in my hand, evidence of a crime I didn't understand, but knew instinctively was dangerous. My voice came out hoarse. I'm with the cleaning service. The phone kept ringing. I thought it might be important. I shouldn't have answered. I'm sorry. He didn't move from the doorway, didn't blink, just stared at me with eyes that were nearly black in the morning light, filtering through the windows I'd just cleaned. The 2 men behind him were clearly security. They wore suits too, but different, less tailored, more functional. One of them had his hand inside his jacket in a way that made my stomach drop. Put the phone down, the man in front said. I set it on the desk with shaking hands. It clattered against the wood louder than it should have. He walked into the room, each step deliberate, controlled. He moved like someone who'd never had to rush for anything, never had to make himself smaller to fit into spaces not designed for him. The security stayed in the doorway. When he reached the desk, he picked up the phone with one hand, checked the screen. His jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. There was a call, he said. Not a question. Private number. 2 minutes ago. I nodded. What did they say? Still not a question. A command. I was suddenly acutely aware that I was alone in a room with 3 men I didn't know, in a house 30 minutes from anywhere I could run to. And no one knew I was here, except an agency dispatcher who wouldn't notice if I disappeared until I missed my next assignment. It was a woman, I said. My voice steadied slightly. If I was going to get through this, I needed to sound competent, calm, not like someone who'd spent the last 6 months one crisis away from complete collapse. She thought you were someone named Marco. She said. I stopped. He was staring at me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. She said what? She said to tell him his wife is alive. Sofia. She said Sofia is alive and to stop looking. She said they'd kill her if he didn't stop. Then the line cut off. The room went absolutely silent. I watched something happen behind his eyes. Not shock, not relief. Something colder. Something that looked like rage wrapped in ice and buried so deep it would take an earthquake to bring it to the surface. Said something in what sounded like Italian. Fast, low. The man in front, Marco presumably, responded in the same language without looking away from me. 2 syllables. Sharp. What's your name? Marco said. Natalie Harper. How long have you worked for the cleaning service? 6 months. Who sent you here? The agency. Pristine Home Solutions. They texted me last night. Said it was a post-event cleanup. Cash payment. Did anyone tell you to answer my phone? No. I swallowed. It kept ringing. I used to be a teacher. I always answered the phone when it rang. It was automatic. I didn't think. I'm sorry. He studied me for another long moment. I couldn't read his expression. Couldn't tell if he believed me or if he thought I was lying, part of some conspiracy I couldn't begin to understand. Leave, he said finally. I moved toward the door immediately. The security guard stepped aside. I was 3 feet into the hallway when I heard a crash behind me. I turned instinctively. Marco had swept his arm across the desk. The phone, papers, a glass frame, all of it hit the floor. The frame shattered. Glass scattered across the hardwood in 1,000 glittering pieces. He stood completely still in the center of the destruction, hands at his sides, breathing carefully controlled. I ran. Down the stairs, through the hallway, past the kitchen where the other cleaners were working. I grabbed my bag from where I'd left it near the service entrance. One of the women, older, gray-haired, looked up. You okay? She asked. I didn't answer, just pushed through the door into the cold morning air. The site manager was outside talking on her phone. She saw me, frowned, ended her call. You're not finished. I can't. I need to leave. I'm sorry. If you leave now, you don't get paid. I understand. I started walking toward the gate. It was a 1/4 mile of driveway. I'd call a rideshare once I was outside the property, even though I couldn't afford it. I just needed to be away from here, away from that room, and that man, and whatever I'd stumbled into. I made it halfway down the driveway before I heard the engine. A black SUV pulled alongside me. Tinted windows. The back window rolled down. Marco looked at me from the interior. His face was composed now, the rage buried again wherever he kept it. Get in. I'd rather walk. That wasn't a request. I don't work for you. I'm leaving. I won't say anything to anyone about the phone call. I don't even know what it meant. I just want to go home. The SUV stopped. The back door opened. Marco stepped out. In the full daylight, he was younger than I'd initially thought. Late 30s, maybe. Tall enough that I had to tilt my head back to meet his eyes. The suit was charcoal gray, perfectly fitted across shoulders that looked like they could carry significant weight without strain. His hands were large, one of them wearing a gold ring on the fourth finger. Not a wedding ring, something else. A seal or crest I couldn't make out. He smelled like cedar and something sharper. Bergamot, maybe. Expensive cologne that probably cost more than my rent. You heard something you shouldn't have, he said quietly. That puts you in danger. From who? I don't understand what's happening. You don't need to understand. You need to be protected until I know who made that call and why. Protected? I'm nobody. I clean houses. Whatever that call was about, it has nothing to do with me. It does now. A van pulled up behind the SUV. The site manager got out, approached us quickly. Mr. Marchesi, I apologize for the disruption. This employee will be terminated immediately. I'll ensure. She still works for you? Marco asked without looking at her. No, sir, as I said. She's terminated effective. Then leave. The site manager froze, looked between us. Marco's expression didn't change, but something in his absolute stillness made the woman take 3 steps backward before turning and walking quickly to the van. I watched it drive away, watched my $200 disappear with it. Marco reached into his jacket. I tensed. He pulled out a leather wallet, removed a business card, held it out to me. Heavy cardstock, embossed lettering. Marco Marchesi, a phone number. Nothing else. If anyone asks you about that call, he said, you contact me first. If anything unusual happens in the next few weeks, someone following you, strange calls, anyone asking about this house or this morning, you call that number. I didn't take the card. I can't be involved in whatever this is. You already are. Then tell me what it is. He looked at me for a long moment. No. Then I don't want your card. He took my hand, his grip firm but not painful, and pressed the card into my palm, closed my fingers around it. Keep it anyway. He turned and got back into the SUV. The door closed. The vehicle pulled away, headed back toward the house. I stood in the driveway holding a business card and trying to remember how to breathe normally. My phone buzzed. Text from Yolanda. How's the cash job? I looked at the card in my hand, looked back at the mansion barely visible through the trees. I texted back, I'll tell you later. The walk to the main road took 20 minutes. I called a rideshare I couldn't afford, climbed into the back seat, gave the driver my address in Queens. The card sat in my coat pocket. I could feel it there, heavy, insistent. I pulled it out once during the drive, studied the name. Marco Marchesi, Marchesi Imports. The driver glanced at me in the rearview mirror. You okay, miss? I put the card away. Fine, just a long morning. When I got home, Owen was with Mrs. Chen from down the hall. She watched him on the mornings I worked early, charged me $20 I didn't have but paid anyway, because childcare was impossible to find otherwise. Owen ran to me when I opened the door. 4 years old, blonde hair that needed cutting, his father's blue eyes. He threw himself at my legs, hard enough that I staggered. Mama, Mrs. Chen made pancakes. That's wonderful, baby. I looked at Mrs. Chen. Thank you, I'll have your payment tomorrow. No rush, she said, but her eyes said otherwise. I took Owen inside, locked the door, sat on the edge of my mattress and pulled out the card again. Marco Marchesi. I typed the name into my phone, hit search. The results loaded slowly on my bargain cellular plan. Marchesi Imports, wine distribution, corporate offices in Midtown Manhattan, family-owned business, 3 generations. I scrolled further. A news article from 2 years ago, small mention in the business section. N. Expansion of territory into New England markets. Another article. Society page. Charity gala. Photo of a man in a tuxedo I recognized, even though the picture was slightly blurred. Marco Marchesi, the caption read, of Marchesi Imports, with his sister Julia Marchesi. I stared at the photo, at the way other people in the frame seemed to orient themselves around him, at the careful distance they maintained. My phone buzzed with a new text. Unknown number. This is Marco Marchesi. I have your employee file from the cleaning agency. If you need anything in the next few weeks, use this number. I read it 3 times, deleted it, put the card in the drawer of my milk crate nightstand, and tried to forget it existed. The card stayed in the drawer for 3 weeks. I found new work. Not through pristine home solutions, they'd blacklisted me after the incident, but through individual postings on neighborhood boards and referrals from Yolanda. $12 an hour here, 15 there. Cash under the table. No benefits, no security, no way to prove income if anyone official came asking. Owen's preschool gave me one more extension, then another. The director was kind but firm. End of the month, she said. Payment or withdrawal. I picked up a third job doing overnight inventory at a warehouse in Brooklyn, 4 nights a week, 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. I slept in 3-hour intervals, drank gas station coffee until my hands shook. Lost 8 pounds I didn't have to lose. Yolanda told me I looked like a ghost. Mrs. Chen stopped asking for payment in advance. Owen asked why I was always tired. I kept the card in the drawer and pretended it wasn't there. On a Thursday night, 22 days after I answered the phone in that office, I came home from the warehouse job to find Owen crying, and Mrs. Chen in my apartment, holding an inhaler that was empty. He had an attack, she said. Her English was limited, but her meaning was clear. Need medicine. This one finished. My hands were numb as I took the inhaler, shook it. Nothing. Owen sat on my mattress, breathing in shallow gasps that weren't quite wheezing, but would be soon if I didn't get him what he needed. I'll handle it, I told Mrs. Chen. Thank you for staying with him. She left. I pulled out my phone and called the pharmacy. The refill would be $140 without insurance. I had $63 in my account. Payday from the warehouse job wasn't until next Friday. I asked if they had a payment plan. They didn't. I asked if there was a generic. There wasn't one that worked as well for acute attacks. I hung up and sat on the floor next to Owen's bed, put my hand on his chest, and felt the rapid rhythm of his breathing. It's okay, baby, I whispered. Mama's going to fix this. He looked at me with Daniel's eyes and nodded because he trusted me. Because he was 4 and didn't understand yet that sometimes mothers couldn't fix things, that sometimes the world was just broken and no amount of love could seal the cracks. I pulled out the drawer, took out the card, stared at it for a full minute. Then I picked up my phone and dialed before I could change my mind. It rang once. Natalie. My breath caught. He knew. Somehow he knew it was me. How did you? What happened? Not a question. The same tone he'd used in his office. Commanding. Absolute. I need help, I said. The words felt like glass in my throat. Where are you? Home, Queens. My son, he needs medication. Asthma. I don't have the money right now, and I can't wait until next week because he's already having trouble breathing and… What pharmacy? I told him. He was quiet for 3 seconds. It'll be ready in 20 minutes. Paid for. Pick it up tonight. I can't accept. You called me. That means you're accepting. What's your address? Why do you need my address? Because I'm sending someone to make sure you and your son get home safely from the pharmacy. That's not necessary. Natalie. He said my name like he was explaining something simple to a child. You called me at 11:47 at night, asking for help. That means something is very wrong. Give me your address, or I'll get it from the employee file I already have. I gave him the address. He hung up without saying goodbye. I took Owen to the pharmacy. A black car was parked outside my building when we left. Not the SUV from before, but similar. Tinted windows, engine running. It followed us at a careful distance. Waited while I went inside and picked up the inhaler that the pharmacist handed me with a knowing look that made me want to explain I wasn't what she thought I was. The car followed us home, parked outside until I was inside with the door locked. Owen used the inhaler. His breathing eased within minutes. He fell asleep in my arms, and I sat there on the floor until my legs went numb, staring at the business card I'd left on the milk crate. The next morning, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. A woman stood in the hallway. Early 30s, dark hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, wearing a coat that probably cost a month of my rent. She held a large paper bag. I opened the door with the chain still on. Natalie Harper? She asked. Yes. I'm Julia Marchesi, Marco's sister. He asked me to bring you breakfast and to check that your son is feeling better. I stared at her. She held up the bag. It's just food. Pastries from a bakery in Little Italy. There's also fruit and juice boxes for your son. May I come in? I shouldn't have let her in. I should have taken the bag and closed the door and pretended this was all normal. Instead, I unhooked the chain and stepped aside. Julia entered and looked around the apartment with the kind of careful neutrality that meant she was cataloging everything and judging nothing out loud. Owen's still asleep, I said quietly. Good. Kids need sleep. She set the bag on the small folding table that served as my kitchen. Started unpacking it. Croissants, muffins, Fresh fruit that looked like it cost more than my weekly grocery budget. Marco said you needed help last night. It was a one-time thing. I'll figure out. He also said you'd say that. She turned to face me. So I'm supposed to tell you that he's not keeping score, and you don't owe him anything except honesty. Honesty about what? About whether you're safe. Safe from what? I still don't understand what happened that morning. Who was that woman on the phone? Why does any of this involve me? Julia's expression shifted, became something harder, more guarded. My brother will explain when he's ready. For now you should know that the phone, one call you answered, wasn't random. Someone wanted Marco to receive that message. We're trying to understand who and why. And you think they might come after me because I heard it? We think it's possible. Which is why there's been a car outside your building every night since you left our house. I sat down heavily on the edge of my mattress. I can't be part of this. I have a son. I can't have security following me around. I can't. You called Marco last night, Julia interrupted gently. You asked for help. He gave it. That's what he does. He protects people who matter to him. I don't matter to him. He doesn't even know me. He knows you answered a phone you shouldn't have touched and told him the truth when you could have lied. He knows you're raising a child alone and working yourself to death trying to survive. He knows more than you think. Owen stirred on his bed, made a small sound. Julia glanced over, then looked back at me. My brother wants to meet with you, she said, officially, at his office, to discuss an arrangement that might benefit both of you. What kind of arrangement? The kind where you don't have to choose between paying rent and buying your son medication. She reached into her purse and pulled out another business card. This one had an address embossed below the phone number. Monday morning, 9 a.m. There'll be a car downstairs to bring you. Owen can come too. We have people who can watch him while we talk. I can't just... You can, and I think you will, because you're smart enough to know you're drowning, and stubborn enough that you won't accept a life preserver unless someone throws it directly at your head. She smiled, but it wasn't unkind. Consider this the life preserver. She left before I could argue. Owen woke up an hour later, saw the pastries, asked if it was his birthday. I told him no, just a gift from a friend. He ate 2 croissants and drank a juice box and didn't wheeze once. I looked at the new card with the address and tried to convince myself I wouldn't go. Monday morning I dressed in the only professional clothes I still owned. A black skirt that was too loose now. A white blouse I'd ironed 3 times. Flats that pinched my toes. I braided my hair back and looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, and saw a woman pretending to be someone she used to be. Owen wore his good jeans and the sweater Yolanda's mother had knitted him last Christmas. The car was waiting outside at 8:45. Same black sedan from the pharmacy. The driver opened the back door without speaking. I hesitated. Then I thought about the empty inhaler and the overdue rent notice and the preschool director's kind but final deadline. I got in the car. The office was in Midtown. Glass and steel. The kind of building where everyone in the lobby walked like they belonged there. We took an elevator to the 23rd floor. The receptionist expected us. Miss Harper, she said warmly. Mr. Marchesi is finishing a call. Please, have a seat. Can I get you anything? Coffee? Water for your son? Owen asked for water. I asked for nothing. The waiting area had leather chairs and a massive aquarium built into the wall. Exotic fish moved through crystal clear water like living jewels. Owen pressed his face to the glass, transfixed. I watched him and tried to slow my heartbeat. The door to the inner office opened. Marco stood in the doorway, phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking in what I now recognized as Italian, rapid, sharp syllables that sounded like commands. He saw me, nodded once, held up a finger. 1 minute. He was dressed like before, perfect suit, dark tie, the kind of clothes that announced wealth without ostentation. But I noticed details I'd missed in the chaos of our first meeting. The way he stood completely still when he wasn't moving. The watch on his wrist that probably cost more than a car. The scar cutting through his left eyebrow. Thin and old. He ended the call, slipped the phone into his pocket, looked at Owen. You must be Owen, he said. Owen turned from the aquarium, looked up at Marco with the fearless curiosity of a 4-year-old. You have big fish. I do. Do you like fish? Owen nodded enthusiastically. Marco crouched down, this tall, expensive man in his perfect suit, and pointed at the aquarium. That one is called a lionfish. See the stripes? They're venomous, beautiful but dangerous. Like a superhero? Exactly like a superhero. He stood and extended his hand to me. I shook it. His grip was warm, firm, brief. "Thank you for coming," he said. "Let's talk in my office. My assistant will take Owen to the break room. There's a television and toys. He'll be safe." A young woman appeared, early 20s, professional, friendly. Owen went with her without hesitation, because he trusted too easily. Because he was still young enough to believe adults wouldn't hurt him. I followed Marco into his office. The view stretched across Manhattan, Central Park visible in the distance. The desk was the same one I'd seen covered in shattered glass 3 weeks ago. Now it was pristine, organized. A laptop, a leather notebook, a single pen. He gestured to a chair across from the desk. I sat. He sat behind the desk, leaned back slightly, and studied me with the same intensity I remembered from that first morning. "The woman who called," he said without preamble, "Sofia. She was my wife. She disappeared 5 years ago. Everyone assumed she was dead. Now someone wants me to believe she's alive." I sat completely still, processing what he'd just told me. A missing wife, 5 years, someone using her as a weapon. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked. "Because you're the only person who heard her voice, and because whoever is using her to get to me might come for you." He paused. "I need you close, where I can protect you. And I need you to help me figure out if that was really her." "How would I know? I never met your wife." "You heard something in her voice. Fear maybe. Urgency. I need you to remember everything about that call. Every word, every sound in the background. The way she pronounced certain syllables." He leaned forward slightly. "You were a literature teacher. You're trained to notice language, details. That makes you valuable. I'm not valuable. I'm someone who answered a phone by mistake. That mistake makes you the only witness I have." I looked past him to the window, watched the city stretch out below us. All those buildings full of people living lives that made sense, but followed logical patterns of cause and effect. "What do you want from me?" I asked. "I want you to work here. Cecily will be a consultant, a translator. You said you taught literature. You understand language, context, interpretation. We import books along with wine. It's legitimate work. And unofficially? Unofficially, you'll be somewhere I can keep you safe while I find out who made that call and what they want. For how long? Until I know you're not in danger." I laughed. It came out sharp, humorless. "I can't work for you. I have 3 jobs. I have rent due in 6 days. I have a son who needs $4,000 a month," Marco said. "Salary, plus an apartment, 2 bedrooms, safe building, security at the entrance. The company pays the rent. You pay nothing." The number hit me like cold water. $4,000. More than I'd made as a teacher. More than I currently made working 80 hours a week across 3 jobs that were destroying my body and my mind. "I can't accept that." "You can, and you will. Because your son's preschool tuition is past due, and you're 3 weeks behind on rent, and you called me in the middle of the night because you have no other options." His voice was matter-of-fact, not cruel, stating facts. "I'm giving you an option now." "Why? You don't know me. You don't owe me anything. You told me the truth when you could have run. You answered my questions instead of lying to protect yourself. That's rare." He opened a desk drawer, removed an envelope, set it on the desk between us. $5,000, cash, for immediate expenses, rent, food, whatever Owen needs. I stared at the envelope, didn't touch it. "I'll pay you back." "No, you won't. Then I can't take it." "Natalie," he said my name with the same patient firmness he'd used on the phone. "You're not taking it. You're accepting compensation for the risk you've been exposed to because of something that happened in my house. That's not charity. That's liability." The logic was twisted, but I was too tired to argue with it. Too tired and too desperate, and too aware that Owen needed things I couldn't provide on my own. "When would I start?" I heard myself ask. "Today if you want. Monday if you need time to settle things with your current jobs." "The apartment?" "Ready by tonight. Julia will take you to see it after we're finished here." Everything was moving too fast. Pre-arranged, like he'd known I would say yes before I walked through the door. "What about the custody hearing?" I asked. He went very still. "What custody hearing?" I hadn't meant to say it, hadn't planned to tell him about David, but the question had slipped out, automatic, because it was the thing that woke me up at 3 a.m. in a cold sweat. "My husband's brother, David, he's filing for custody of Owen, says I'm financially unstable, emotionally unfit. The preliminary hearing is in 9 days. Do you have a lawyer?" "Public defender. She's overworked and underpaid, and she told me honestly that I don't have a strong case. I can't prove financial stability. I lost my teaching job after a breakdown. I'm working under the table for cash. On paper, I look exactly like what he's claiming I am." Marco was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up his phone and dialed a number from memory. Richard, I need a family law specialist, the best you have. Custody case, preliminary hearing in 9 days. He listened. I don't care what they're charging. Clear their schedule. Bill it to Marchesi Imports. Another pause. The client's name is Natalie Harper. Send everything to Julia by end of day. He hung up. I was shaking. I didn't realize it until I looked down and saw my hands trembling in my lap. You can't. That'll cost. It's handled. I can't let you pay for. You work for me now. I protect my employees. That includes making sure they're not fighting legal battles alone with inadequate representation. He stood. Julia will go over the employment paperwork with you. You'll need to sign contracts, tax forms, the standard documentation. She'll also show you the apartment and arrange for movers if you need them. I don't have much to move. Something flickered across his face. Not pity, something harder to name. Then it'll be a short move. He walked to the door, opened it, paused. The car that's been outside your building at night, it stays there until you're in the new apartment. After that, security will be at your building entrance. You won't see them, but they'll be there. Is that really necessary? Yes. He left the office. I sat alone in the leather chair, staring at the envelope full of cash I hadn't touched, and tried to understand what had just happened. Julia appeared in the doorway 10 minutes later. Ready to see your new home? The apartment was on East 73rd Street, between Park and Lexington, 5th floor of a pre-war building, with an actual doorman who greeted Julia by name. 2 bedrooms, hardwood floors, windows that let in clean light. The kitchen had appliances that worked. The bathroom had a tub without rust stains. Owen ran from room to room, shouting about how big everything was. I stood in the living room and felt like I was in someone else's life. It's too much, I said. Julia was leaning against the kitchen counter, watching me with the same analytical look she'd had in my old apartment. It's what Marco decided you need. He's rarely wrong about these things. I don't understand why he's doing this. Because he can. Because you need it. Because you're connected to something dangerous, and he doesn't leave loose ends unprotected. She pushed off the counter. And because I think he sees something in you that reminds him there are still honest people in the world. I'm not that honest. I'm just desperate. Desperation doesn't make people honest. Usually it makes them liars. She handed me a folder. Employment contract. Read it carefully. If you have questions, ask. You sign, you start Monday. Health insurance kicks in immediately. Owen's preschool tuition will be paid directly by the company as a dependent benefit. I opened the folder, scanned the first page. 4,000 monthly salary, health benefits, paid time off, everything written in clean legal language that made it real. What if I can't do the job? What if I'm not actually useful to him? Then we'll figure something else out. But Marco doesn't make offers he hasn't thought through. If he hired you, he has a reason. I signed the papers because I didn't have a choice. Because Owen needed insurance, and I needed sleep, and I was so tired of being afraid every time the phone rang or the mail came. Julia took the signed contract. Movers can come tomorrow if you give me a time. Things brought over in the company van tonight. I can move my own things. You could, but you don't have to. She checked her watch. I have a meeting in an hour. The apartment is yours as of now. Keys are on the counter. Security code is written on the envelope. Doorman's name is Steve. He's worked here 8 years. Very reliable. Any questions? Why is your brother really doing this? Julia studied me for a long moment. 5 years ago, Marco's wife disappeared. No body, no witnesses, no closure. He's been living in a kind of stasis ever since. Half alive, going through motions. She paused. You made him say her name out loud. He hasn't done that in 3 years. I don't know if that's good or dangerous, but it's something. She left before I could ask what she meant. Owen found me standing in the empty second bedroom that would be his. Actually his, with a door that closed, and walls he could put posters on. Mama, can I really have this room? Yes, baby, it's yours. Is the fish man going to live here too? The fish man? The one with the big office and the superhero fish? His name is Mr. Marchesi, and no, he's not living here. This is just our apartment. He's my new boss. Is he nice? I thought about Marco's face when I told him about the custody hearing, the way he'd made one phone call and solved a problem I'd been losing sleep over for weeks. I think so, I said. I think he might be. We moved that night. Yolanda came to help even though there wasn't much to carry. 1 suitcase of clothes, Owen's bin of toys, the few kitchen items I'd accumulated. It fit in the trunk of the company van that appeared at 7 p.m. Yolanda stood in the new apartment, shaking her head. Nena, what did you get yourself into? I don't know, I admitted. But it has health insurance, and Owen gets his own bedroom. You trust this man, this Marchesi? I don't know him well enough to trust him. But you're living in an apartment he's paying for, and working in his office, and letting him send lawyers to your custody hearing. Yes, that's not trust, that's surrender. Maybe she was right. Maybe I'd stopped fighting and started just accepting whatever life handed me because I was too exhausted to evaluate whether it was safe. Owen fell asleep in his new bed at 8:30, tucked under sheets that still had store creases in them. I sat in the living room, on a couch that had come with the furnished apartment, and pulled out my phone. I had 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. No voicemail. Then a text from the same number. "This is David. We need to talk about Owen. Call me." My hands went cold. I hadn't spoken to David in over a year. 14 months to be exact. He'd shown up twice after Daniel's funeral, once with a casserole I'd thrown away, once with a sympathy card that had a Bible verse I didn't want to read, until 2 months ago when the calls started. Now he had my number, knew where to reach me. I blocked the number and tried not to think about the hearing in 8 days. My phone rang, Marco's name on the screen. I answered. "Hello? You're in the apartment?" "Yes. Everything acceptable?" "It's more than acceptable. It's, thank you." "Lock the doors. Security's in place downstairs, but I want you to use the deadbolt and chain." "Okay. If anything unusual happens, anything at all, you call me, not 911, me first." "Understood." A pause. Then, "Get some sleep, Natalie. You start Monday, but Julia will check in tomorrow to make sure you have what you need." He hung up before I could respond. I locked the doors like he'd instructed, checked on Owen one more time, lay down in my own bedroom, with a door and a window and a mattress on an actual bed frame, and stared at the ceiling. 3 weeks ago I'd been cleaning a stranger's office for $200. Now I lived in an apartment I couldn't afford, worked for a man I barely knew, and was tangled in something involving missing wives and mysterious phone calls. But Owen had insurance, and his own room, and I had 8 hours before my shift at the warehouse job I could finally quit. I closed my eyes and let myself believe, just for tonight, that maybe I'd made the right choice. Monday morning arrived faster than I expected. I dressed carefully, the same black skirt and white blouse I'd worn to the initial meeting, but they fit better now. I'd eaten 3 real meals over the weekend, slept in a bed that didn't make my back ache. The difference was already visible in the mirror. Owen went to his preschool like normal. The tuition had been paid in full through the end of the year. The director had called me personally to confirm, her voice warm with relief that made me feel both grateful and humiliated. The company car picked me up at 8:30. Same driver, same careful silence. I arrived at the Marchesi Imports building at 8:50 and took the elevator to the 23rd floor with my heart beating too fast. The receptionist, Miranda, according to the nameplate on her desk, greeted me with a smile that seemed genuine. "Miss Harper, welcome. Julia is expecting you in the conference room." She led me down a hallway lined with framed photographs of vineyards and old Italian architecture. The conference room had floor-to-ceiling windows and a table that could seat 20 people. Julia sat at one end with a laptop and several folders spread in front of her. "Good morning," she said. "Coffee?" "Please." She poured from a carafe that sat on a side table. Real coffee, the kind that smelled expensive. I took the cup and sat across from her. "First day orientation," Julia said, pushing one of the folders toward me. "Building access card, office assignment. IT will set up your email and system access this morning. Your official title is Cultural Liaison and Translation Consultant." That sounds made up. Most corporate titles are. She opened another folder. "These are the current projects where we actually could use your expertise. We import rare books and manuscripts along with wine, collector's items, first editions, things that need authentication and cultural context for pricing. Your literature background is legitimately useful." I opened the folder, saw photographs of old books, correspondence in Italian, appraisal requests. "I don't speak Italian," I said. "You'll learn enough. We have translators for the technical work. What we need is someone who understands the literary value, the historical context. Can you tell me why a first edition of a specific Dante translation is worth $50,000 versus $5,000? That's where you come in." It made sense. More sense than I expected. I felt something loosen in my chest, the fear that this was entirely fabricated, that I was here only because Marco felt obligated to protect me. "I can do that," I said. "I know. That's why you're here." Julia closed the laptop. "Now the unofficial part. Marco will want to talk to you about the phone call, probably today. He'll ask you to go through it again, in detail. Every word you remember, every sound. He's trying to determine if it was really Sofia or someone imitating her." "How would I know the difference?" You wouldn't, but you might remember something that helps him know. She paused. He's going to be intense about this. It's not personal. It's just how he processes. Processes what? Hope. The possibility that his wife might be alive. It's been 5 years of not knowing. That call ripped open something he'd managed to bury. I thought about the way Marco had swept everything off his desk that first morning. The controlled violence of it. Rage wrapped in ice. What happened to her? I asked. Julia's expression closed. That's his story to tell, not mine. The door opened. Marco entered, wearing another perfect suit, navy this time, with a white shirt and no tie. He looked like he'd been awake for hours. There was a coffee cup in his hand, and a phone pressed to his ear. He was speaking Italian again. Fast, clipped sentences. He ended the call and pocketed the phone. Natalie. Good, you're here. He sat at the head of the table. Julia caught you up on the actual work? Yes. Good, you'll start with the Petrarch manuscript appraisal. It's in your office. Take your time with it, we're not on a deadline. He set down his coffee. But first, I need you to walk me through the phone call again. Julia stood. I'll leave you to it. Natalie, your office is 3 doors down on the left. I'll check in at lunch. She left. The door clicked shut. Marco pulled a small recording device from his pocket. Set it on the table. Do you mind if I record this? No. He pressed a button. A red light appeared. Tell me everything you remember. Start from when the phone first rang. I closed my eyes and went back to that morning. The office with the bookshelves. The phone charging on the desk. It rang 3 times, I said. I ignored it the first 2. The third time I answered without thinking. Reflex from teaching. I always answered the school phone. What did you say when you picked up? Hello, just that. And the caller? There was silence first, maybe 3 seconds, then breathing. Then she said your name. Marco, like a question. Accent? European. Eastern European maybe. I'm not good with accents. Tone? Urgent. Scared. I opened my eyes. I told her she had the wrong number. Started to say this wasn't. And she interrupted me. With what? Tell him his wife is alive. Those exact words. Tell him Sofia is alive. Tell him to stop looking. They'll kill me if he doesn't stop. I paused. Then the line cut off, like someone ended the call abruptly. Marco was completely still. She said they'll kill me. Not they'll kill her. Me. Yes. Background noise? I tried to remember. Nothing distinct. Maybe traffic? Something distant, but I can't be sure. How old did she sound? 30s maybe. It's hard to tell from a few seconds of panicked speech. He reached for his phone, scrolled through something, turned the screen toward me. It was a photograph. A woman with dark blonde hair, green eyes, delicate features. She was laughing at something off camera. Late 20s or early 30s. Beautiful in an understated way. This is Sofia, Marco said. Does anything about her seem familiar? I studied the photo, tried to match the voice I'd heard to the face I was seeing. I don't know, I said honestly. I heard maybe 10 seconds of speech. I can't say if it was her. He took the phone back, stared at the photo for a long moment, before pocketing it again. She disappeared 5 years ago, he said quietly. We were in Prague. Business trip. She went out for coffee one morning and never came back. No witnesses, no security footage that showed anything useful. No body. I'm sorry. Everyone assumed she was dead. Kidnapping gone wrong, trafficking, any number of horrible possibilities. I looked for her for 2 years, hired investigators, followed leads that went nowhere. Eventually I had to accept that she was gone. And now someone wants you to think she's alive. Yes. He looked at me directly. The question is why. Either she is alive and in danger, or someone is using her memory to manipulate me. Both options are dangerous. Dangerous how? Because if she's alive, whoever has her wants something from me. And if she's not, whoever is pretending she is also wants something. Either way, they're using her to make me vulnerable. I understood then. The protection, the security, the need to keep me close. You think they'll come after me because I heard the call? I think anyone connected to that message is potentially a target. You, me, anyone in this building who might know something useful. He stood, which is why you stay visible. You work here. You live in a building we monitor. You don't go anywhere unfamiliar without telling someone. That sounds like a prison. That sounds like staying alive until I know what we're dealing with. The recording device was still running. Marco reached over and stopped it. The red light disappeared. Your office is ready, he said. Julia will show you the current projects. If you need anything, tell her or Miranda. They'll handle it. What about you? What about me? Do I report to you or to Julia? Julia handles day-to-day operations. But if something feels wrong, anything connected to that phone call, or anything unusual. He walked to the door, paused. And Natalie? Yes? Thank you. For remembering. For being honest. It matters. He left before I could respond. I sat alone in the conference room for a full minute, staring at the recording device he'd left on the table. Then I picked up my coffee and went to find my office. It was small but functional. Desk, computer, bookshelves already filled with reference materials. A window that looked out over the street below. There was a framed photograph on one shelf. Me and Owen, taken at some point I didn't remember. Someone had printed it and framed it, and placed it here, like I was already part of this world. The Petrarch manuscript was waiting on my desk in an archival box. I opened it carefully, and lost myself in 14th century Italian. Poetry for 3 hours. Julia appeared at noon with sandwiches from a deli that definitely didn't deliver to this neighborhood. Lunch, she announced. You need to eat. We ate in my office. She asked about Owen, about the apartment, about whether I needed anything. I asked about the business, the wine importation, the legitimacy of everything I was seeing. It's real, she said. The wine, the books, the corporate structure. Our family has been doing this for 3 generations, legally. And illegally? She looked at me with something like respect. You're not stupid. Good. Yes, there are aspects of the business that exist in gray areas. Import regulations, tax structures, territorial agreements with other families. But the wine is real. The books are real. You're not a front. You're actual employment. Other families? Italian families. We're not the only ones who run import businesses in the Northeast. There's an understanding about territories, about who controls what. Sometimes those understandings get tested. Is that what the phone call was about? Someone testing boundaries? Maybe. Marco is trying to figure that out. She finished her sandwich and stood. There's something you should know. His mother wants to meet you. Why? Because Marco told her about you. He never tells her about anyone. She's curious. I'm just an employee. If you were just an employee, you wouldn't be wearing that necklace. I touched my throat automatically. There was a delicate gold chain there, a cross, Italian in design. It had been in a box on my desk this morning, with a note. Welcome to the team, from the Marchesi family. It's a welcome gift, I said. It's a family piece. Marco's grandmother wore it. Julia wore it before she gave it to the company gift collection. She smiled. You're not just an employee, Natalie. You just don't know it yet. She left me with that thought. I worked until 5, completed the Petrarch appraisal, started on a Victorian-era poetry collection that needed authentication. The work was absorbing enough that I almost forgot where I was and why I was really here. Miranda stopped by at 4:30. Mr. Marchesi wanted me to remind you that the car will take you home at 5:15. Owen's preschool closes at 5:30. The driver knows to pick him up first. I can take the subway. Mr. Marchesi was very clear about the car. So I took the car. It picked up Owen from preschool. He was delighted by the fancy vehicle and the nice driver, and brought us home to the apartment that still didn't feel real. There was groceries waiting inside. Fresh fruit, bread, milk, things I hadn't ordered. A note on the counter in handwriting I didn't recognize. Julia thought you might need a few things. Welcome to the family. I put the groceries away, and made dinner, and helped Owen with the simple homework his preschool had started assigning. At 8 p.m., my phone rang. Marco's name. Yes? You're home? Yes. Everything okay? Yes. Thank you for the groceries, and the car service. You didn't have to. Owen needs to eat. You need reliable transportation. It's handled. A pause. The custody hearing is Friday. Richard Lau will meet with you Thursday afternoon to prepare. He's the best family law attorney in the state. He'll handle everything. I can't afford. It's already paid for. Company expense. You're an employee facing a legal challenge that could affect your work stability. We protect our people. The logic was circular, but I was too tired to argue. Thank you, I said. Get some sleep. Tomorrow you'll meet with the wine authentication team. They'll walk you through how we verify provenance on rare vintages. Your literature background applies there too. He hung up. I stood in my kitchen with working appliances and food in the refrigerator, and wondered what I'd actually agreed to when I signed that employment contract. Owen called from his room. Mama, can you read to me? I read him 3 books, tucked him in, watched him fall asleep in his own bed, in his own room. Then I went to my own room and lay down, and tried not to think about the fact that somewhere in this city, someone knew I'd answered that phone call, and they knew where to find me if they wanted to. By the 3rd week, I'd stopped flinching every time Marco appeared in my office doorway. He did it often, 3, sometimes 4 times a day, always with a reason, a question about a manuscript, a document that needed my signature, an update on some aspect of the business I was slowly learning. But the reasons felt secondary to something else I couldn't quite name. He'd stand in the doorway, filling it completely with his height and presence, and ask his question. I'd answer, he'd nod, and leave. Except sometimes he wouldn't leave immediately. He'd linger for 5-10 seconds, looking at the books I'd shelved, the coffee cup I always forgot to refill, the way I twisted my hair when I was concentrating. I pretended not to notice. The work itself was exactly what Julia had described. Legitimate, absorbing. I authenticated rare books, researched provenance for wine collections, wrote appraisal reports that actually required my education and expertise. It felt like using muscles I'd forgotten I had. Marco brought lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The first time he'd simply appeared at noon with 2 containers from an Italian restaurant I'd never heard of, set one on my desk without asking if I was hungry. You didn't eat yesterday, he said. Julia noticed. I had a granola bar. That's not eating. He'd left before I could argue. The food was extraordinary. Homemade pasta, fresh bread, vegetables that tasted like they'd been picked that morning. I ate every bite because I was starving, and because refusing felt childish. The second time, he stayed, sat in the chair across from my desk and ate his own lunch in silence while I worked. It should have been awkward. Instead, it was oddly comfortable, like studying in a library with someone else nearby. You don't have to keep feeding me, I said after the 4th lunch delivery. I know. So why do you? He looked at me over his coffee cup. Because you won't feed yourself properly. Someone has to. By the end of the 3rd week, it had become routine. Tuesday and Thursday, noon, lunch appeared. Sometimes he stayed, sometimes he didn't. I stopped questioning it. The custody hearing happened on a Friday. Richard Lau was everything Marco had promised. Mid-50s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of quiet confidence that came from winning cases that mattered. He'd met with me twice beforehand, asked questions that seemed irrelevant, took notes on everything. David showed up with his own lawyer. Cheaper suit, aggressive posture. I hadn't seen Daniel's brother in 14 months. He looked older, harder. His eyes, when they landed on me, were cold in a way I didn't remember. The hearing lasted 90 minutes. Richard presented documentation I hadn't known existed. Employment verification, lease agreements, medical records showing Owen's asthma was properly managed, character references from people I'd never asked to vouch for me. David's lawyer argued financial instability, emotional unfitness, inadequate living conditions. Richard demolished each point methodically, presented pay stubs, bank statements, photographs of the apartment, called Julia as a witness. She testified about my work performance, my reliability, my competence. The judge asked David directly why he was pursuing custody after 14 months of no contact. David stammered something about family duty and wanting to help. Richard presented phone records showing David had called me 47 times in the past 8 weeks, all ignored, all unanswered. This isn't about helping Miss Harper, Richard said calmly. This is about accessing the trust fund established for Owen Harper upon his father's death. Mr. David Harper is listed as alternate trustee. He gains financial control only if he obtains custody. The judge looked at David with open distaste. The ruling came 20 minutes later. Petition denied. Restraining order granted. David was to maintain a distance of 500 feet from both me and Owen. No contact except through attorneys. I walked out of the courthouse with Richard beside me, and my hands shaking so badly I had to clench them into fists. Thank you, I managed. You're welcome. Send my regards to Marco. The company car was waiting. Marco was inside. I stopped on the sidewalk. You didn't have to come. I wanted to know the outcome. I got in. The driver pulled away from the curb. It's over, I said. He can't take Owen. Marco nodded once. Didn't smile, but something eased in his shoulders. Good. We rode in silence for 3 blocks. Then I started crying. Not delicate tears. Ugly, shaking sobs that came from somewhere deep and wouldn't stop. All the fear I'd been holding for weeks, all the exhaustion and terror and desperate hope, it poured out in the backseat of a car while Marco sat beside me and said nothing. He didn't tell me it was okay. Didn't offer empty reassurances. He just handed me a handkerchief from his pocket, actual cloth, monogrammed, and let me break apart without trying to fix it. When I finally stopped, my face was hot and my eyes felt swollen. I'm sorry, I said. Don't be. I don't usually. I know. He took the handkerchief back, already ruined with mascara I'd forgotten I was wearing. Today seems like a reasonable day for it. The driver took us back to the office. I went to the bathroom and washed my face and tried to make myself presentable. Failed completely. Julia found me there. "You won," she said. "I know. So why do you look devastated?" "Because I shouldn't have needed a $500 an hour attorney to keep my own son. Because the system is designed to punish people like me. Because if Marco hadn't, I stopped. I'm just tired. Go home, take the weekend, come back Monday. I have work to finish. It'll wait." I went home, picked up Owen from preschool, made dinner, gave him a bath, read him stories until he fell asleep. Then I sat in the living room and stared at nothing until my phone rang. Marco's name. "Hello? You left your keys in the office." I checked my bag. He was right. "I'll get them Monday. I'm bringing them now. I'll leave them with the doorman." "You don't have to. I'm already in the car." He hung up. 20 minutes later, there was a knock at my door. I checked the peephole. Marco stood in the hallway holding my keys. I opened the door. He handed them to me. "You should keep better track of these." "I know. Thank you for bringing them." He nodded, started to turn away. Stopped. "Are you okay?" he asked. "I'm fine." "That's not what I asked." I leaned against the doorframe. "I'm exhausted, relieved, terrified it's not really over, guilty that I needed so much help, grateful I had it. I don't know what I am." He was quiet for a moment. Then, "You're safe, Owen is safe. That's what matters. Because of you. Because you called me when you needed help. That took courage. It took desperation. Same thing sometimes." I almost smiled. Almost. "Do you want to come in?" I asked. "I made too much pasta. I'm not used to cooking for 2 yet. I keep making portions for—" I stopped. "For 3. I kept making portions for 3 because for 6 years I'd cooked for myself and Daniel and eventually Owen." "I'd like that," Marco said. He came inside, met Owen properly. My son appeared in his pajamas, wide awake despite the late hour, excited to see the fishman again. Marco sat on the floor with him and talked about lionfish and clownfish and the octopus he was considering adding to the aquarium at the office. I reheated pasta and watched them together and felt something shift in my chest, something warm and terrifying. We ate at the small table, Owen between us, chattering about preschool and his friend Jacob and the picture he'd drawn of our new apartment. Marco asked questions, listened to the answers like they mattered, made Owen laugh with a terrible knock-knock joke. At 8:30, I put Owen to bed. When I came back to the living room, Marco was washing dishes. "You don't have to do that. You cooked, I clean, it's fair." I picked up a towel and dried while he washed. We worked in silence that felt less awkward than it should have. "He looks like you," Marco said quietly. "Everyone says he looks like Daniel. He has Daniel's coloring, but his expressions are yours. The way he tilts his head when he's thinking, that's you." I didn't know what to say to that. Marco finished the last dish, dried his hands, turned to face me. "I need to tell you something," he said. My stomach dropped. "What?" "We've been investigating the phone call, trying to trace where it came from, who placed it. The number was routed through 3 different countries, untraceable by conventional means." "So you don't know who called?" "Not yet, but we know it wasn't random. Someone wanted me to hear that message. They're planning something." "Planning what?" "I don't know, but there's a territorial meeting in 6 weeks. All the families, negotiating trade routes. Tests and agreements for next year. If someone wanted to destabilize me before that meeting, this would be an effective strategy. Using your missing wife to make you seem weak." "Yes." I set down the dish towel. "What do you need from me?" "I need you to stay alert. If anyone approaches you, asks unusual questions, seems too interested in your connection to me, I need to know immediately." "You think they'd come after me?" "I think they'd use whatever leverage they could find. Right now, you're one of the few people who knows about that call. That makes you valuable. Or a target." "Both." He pulled out his phone, showed me a photograph. A man, late 40s, cold eyes, expensive suit. "This is Alexei Volkov. He runs Bratva operations in Brooklyn. If you see him anywhere near you or Owen, you call me, not security, me directly." I studied the photo, memorized the face. "Okay." He pocketed the phone. "I'm going to increase security at your building. You won't see them, but they'll be there. 2 men, rotating shifts." "Is that really necessary?" "Yes." I walked into the door. He paused with his hand on the handle. "Thank you for dinner," he said. "Thank you for bringing my keys and for everything else. The lawyer, the apartment, the job, all of it. You've thanked me enough. I don't think I have. He looked at me for a long moment. Something passed across his face, too quick to identify. Lock the door behind me, he said. Deadbolt and chain. Then he was gone. I locked the door. Stood there for a full minute with my forehead pressed against the wood. Yolanda called the next morning. I haven't seen you in 3 weeks, she said. You avoiding me? Just busy. Busy with your mafia boss who pays for fancy apartments and sends lawyers to court? He's not mafia. Nana. My cousin's husband says the Marchesi name makes people nervous. Says they control half the waterfront. That's not wine importing. It's complicated. It's dangerous. Maybe, but Owen is safe. I have health insurance, I'm not working 3 jobs and sleeping 4 hours a night. Whatever it is, it's better than what I had. She was quiet for a moment. You like him. Who? Don't play stupid. The boss, Marco, you like him. I barely know him. That's not an answer. I looked out the window at the street below. At the black sedan parked across from my building, with 2 men inside, who were definitely not visiting anyone. I don't know what I feel, I said honestly. He's intense and private, and I think he's capable of things that would terrify me if I thought about them too hard. But he brought my son dinner, and washed my dishes, and made him laugh. So I don't know. Be careful, Yolanda said. Men like that, they protect what's theirs, but they also own what's theirs. Make sure you know which one you are, before you get in too deep. A month after the custody hearing, Marco started appearing at unexpected times. Once when it rained and I'd forgotten an umbrella. The SUV was waiting outside the office. He was inside, reading something on his phone. Get in, he said. I can take the subway. It's pouring. Get in. I got in. He dropped me at my building without conversation. The driver handed me an umbrella when I got out. Keep it, Marco said. You'll need it again. Another time, I was working late, 10 p.m., finishing an appraisal that was due Monday. Marco appeared in my office doorway. Why are you still here, he said. Deadline. It can wait until Monday. I want it finished. He walked in, sat in the chair across from my desk, pulled out his own laptop and worked in silence. At 11, he looked up. You're falling asleep. I'm fine. No, you're not. Go home. I'll have the driver take you. I can. Natalie. He closed his laptop. Go home, sleep, come back Monday and finish. The manuscript isn't going anywhere. I was too tired to argue. He walked me to the elevator, rode down with me, saw me into the car. Get some rest, he said. It became a pattern. When I pushed too hard, he pushed back. When I forgot to eat, food appeared. When I tried to work through exhaustion, he sent me home. Julia noticed. He's never done this before, she said one afternoon. We were having coffee in her office, ostensibly discussing a wine authentication issue, but really just talking. Done what? Paid attention to someone's well-being. Marco is protective of family, loyal to people who work for him. But this, checking if you ate, making sure you sleep, this is different. He's just being kind. Marco is many things. Kind isn't usually one of them. Effective, yes. Fair, absolutely. But kind. She shook her head. That's reserved for very few people. Maybe he feels responsible because of the phone call. Maybe. She didn't sound convinced. Or maybe he's starting to care and doesn't know what to do about it. 2 months after I started working at Marchesi Imports, Marco's mother invited me to Sunday dinner. The invitation came through Julia. You can say no, she said, but Rosa doesn't invite people to family dinner unless they matter, and she's been asking about you for weeks. Why? Because Marco mentioned you, multiple times. That's unprecedented. So I went. The house was in Westchester, the same mansion where I'd cleaned and answered the phone that changed everything. It looked different in daylight, less intimidating, more like a home. Rosa Marchesi was 64, elegant, sharp-eyed. She embraced me at the door like we'd known each other for years. You're the teacher, she said in accented English. Marco says you're very smart, very capable. I try. He also says you make good pasta. I glanced at Marco, who was standing nearby with an expression of mild horror. I told her you cooked dinner once, he said. She extrapolated. Dinner was chaos. 15 people around an enormous table. Marco's sisters, their husbands, 4 children under 10, aunts and uncles whose names I couldn't track. Everyone talking at once, switching between English and Italian, passing dishes and arguing good-naturedly about everything from politics to pasta sauce recipes. Owen loved it. He sat between Marco and Julia, eating more than I'd ever seen him consume, laughing at jokes he didn't fully understand. Rosa watched me throughout the meal with an assessing gaze that made me nervous. After dinner, she pulled me aside into a sitting room. You're good for him, she said without preamble. I'm just an employee. No, you're not. She settled into a chair, gestured for me to sit across from her. And the son has been half alive for 5 years. Since Sofia. He goes through motions, works, manages the business. But he doesn't live. Not really. I'm sorry for your loss. It's his loss, not mine. I never liked her. I blinked. You didn't like your daughter-in-law. She was beautiful, charming, also manipulative and ambitious. She saw Marco as a means to wealth and status. When she disappeared, I grieved for my son's pain, not for her. I didn't know what to say to that. You're different, Rosa continued. You work because you're competent, not because you're ambitious. You care for your son above everything. You don't use people. She leaned forward. You're good for Marco. Make him remember how to be human. Keep doing that. That night, driving home, Marco was quiet. Your mother is intense, I finally said. She likes you. How can you tell? She didn't interrogate you about your intentions. That means she's already decided you're acceptable. Acceptable for what? He didn't answer. Owen fell asleep in the car seat. Marco carried him upstairs to the apartment, laid him in bed with a gentleness that made my chest ache. We stood in Owen's doorway, watching him sleep. Thank you for today, I said quietly. He had a wonderful time. He's easy to please. Food and attention. That's all he needs. That's all any of us need, really. Marco looked at me. We were standing close in the narrow doorway. Close enough that I could smell cedar and bergamot, could see the faint scar through his eyebrow. Natalie, he said. Yes? His phone rang. He stepped back, pulled it out, checked the screen. His expression hardened. I have to take this. He walked to the living room. I heard him speaking in rapid Italian, voice low and dangerous. When he came back, his face was arranged in careful neutrality. I need to go. Something's come up. Is everything okay? It will be. He left. I locked the door behind him and tried not to wonder what emergency required his attention at 9 p.m. on a Sunday. I found out the next morning. Julia appeared in my office at 8 a.m. We have a problem, she said. Julia closed the door behind her and locked it. That's when I knew it was serious. She set an envelope on my desk. Manila, unmarked, sealed. This was delivered to your apartment building last night. The doorman intercepted it. Called Marco immediately. My hands felt cold. What's inside? I did. 3 photographs slid out. The first showed Owen leaving his preschool, backpack on his shoulders, holding hands with his teacher. The second was me, walking from the office building to the waiting car. The third made my stomach drop. It was a woman, blonde hair, photographed from behind or at an angle that made her face unclear. She was sitting at a cafe table somewhere European. Cobblestone streets, old architecture visible in the background, carefully composed to suggest without confirming. Beneath the photos, a note in printed text. Tell Marchesi to stop looking, or we take something he's starting to care about. I read it 3 times. My hands were shaking. Owen, I whispered. Bowen is fine. Marco had security pick him up from your apartment at 6 a.m. He's in a safe location with 2 armed guards who specialize in child protection. You took my son without asking me? Marco made a judgment call. Someone photographed your child and sent you a threat. He acted to neutralize the danger immediately. Her voice was calm, matter of fact. You can be angry about the method later. Right now we need to focus on the threat. I forced myself to breathe. Where is Owen? Westchester House, with Rosa and Francesca. He thinks it's a fun sleepover with new friends. He's safe, Natalie, I promise. I wanted to scream, wanted to drive to Westchester immediately and take my son and disappear somewhere these people would never find us. Instead, I asked, who sent this? We're working on that. The photos were professionally taken, surveillance quality. The note gives us more information than whoever sent it probably intended. How? Because they're threatening something Marco's starting to care about, not something he already owns. That's specific phrasing. It means they've been watching long enough to assess his feelings, but not long enough to be certain. She tapped the photo of the blonde woman. And this is their leverage. They think showing him Sofia will make him compliant. Is it her? We don't know. Marco is having it analyzed. The door opened without knocking. Marco entered, followed by 2 men I'd never seen before. They wore suits, but moved like soldiers. Controlled, alert, dangerous. Marco's eyes went to me first. You're okay? I'm terrified. But yes. He nodded once, turned to the 2 men. Wait outside. They left. Julia started to follow. Stay, Marco said. She stayed. Marco picked up the photos from my desk, studied them with an expression I couldn't read. The doorman who accepted this package, he said quietly. He's been working at that building for 3 months. Before that, he worked at a building in Brighton Beach owned by Volkov's organization. You think he was planted? I know he was. We're handling it. Something in his tone made me not want to know what handling it meant. The woman in the photo, I said. Is that Sofia? I don't know. The angle is intentionally obscured. It could be her. Could be someone who looks like her. Could be an old photo digitally altered to look recent. He set down the photographs. But someone wants me to believe it's her. And they're using you and Owen to force my hand. Force you to do what? Stop investigating. Stop asking questions about where she went and who took her. Accept that she's alive somewhere and let it go. Why would they care if you investigate? If she's alive and doesn't want to be found, she could just stay hidden. Because investigation leads to discovery, and discovery leads to answers. Whoever is behind this doesn't want me finding those answers. Julia leaned against a wall. We think the Bratva is using the Sofia situation to destabilize you before the territorial meeting, make you seem distracted, emotional, weak. If the other families think you're compromised, they'll push for unfavorable terms. Or worse, Marco added, they'll question whether I'm fit to lead this family, challenge my position, create chaos that benefits Volkov. I tried to process this. So this isn't about your wife at all. It's about territory and power. It's always about territory and power, Marco said. Sofia is just the weapon they're using. Using. My phone rang. Unknown number. I showed Marco the screen. Answer it, he said. Speaker. I answered and put it on speaker. Ms. Harper. The voice was male, accented, Russian, I thought. You received our message. I looked at Marco. He nodded. Yes, I said. Good, then you understand the situation. Tell Marchesi to accept that his wife is alive and stop looking for her. If he continues investigating, your son will disappear. Just like Sofia disappeared. No body, no answers, just gone. My vision narrowed. We won't have to touch him. If Marchesi is smart, he'll make the right choice. The line went dead. I stood frozen, the phone still in my hand. Marco took it from me gently, set it on the desk, then he pulled out his own phone and made a call. It's me, he said in English. They just called Natalie's phone directly. Threatened Owen. A pause. I want 20 men. Full tactical. Trace the call and find the origin point. Another pause. I don't care what it costs, find them. He hung up, made another call. Richard, I need emergency custody documentation. Temporary guardianship transfer in case Natalie is incapacitated or threatened. Yes, now. Have it ready in 2 hours. He ended the call and looked at me. What are you doing? I asked. Making sure that if something happens to you, Owen is legally protected. I'll be named temporary guardian. Julia as secondary. That way, even if they try to use legal channels to access him, they can't. You're planning for me to be incapacitated? I'm planning for every possibility. Including the one where I take Owen and leave the city entirely? He went very still. Is that what you want? I want my son safe. If that means disappearing, then yes. You can't run from this. They've already found you once. They'll find you again. He moved closer, stopped 2 feet away, but I can end it. Permanently. By finding out who's really behind this and removing the threat. Removing, I repeated. You mean killing them? He didn't flinch. If necessary. Julia spoke from her position by the wall. We've identified 3 possible points of origin for the operation. One is Volkov's organization in Brooklyn. Another is a trafficking ring with ties to Eastern Europe. The third is a private military contractor that specializes in extortion and psychological warfare. You think it's the contractor, I said. Yes, the professionalism of the surveillance, the psychological precision of the threat, it's too sophisticated for standard organized crime. Someone hired specialists. Hired them to do what exactly? Marco answered. To make me vulnerable, distracted, willing to negotiate from a position of weakness at the territorial meeting in 4 weeks. And if you don't negotiate? Then they escalate. They've already threatened Owen. Next they'll act on that threat unless I give them what they want. Shipping routes. Control of 3 major ports between here and Boston. He pulled out his phone again, showed me a map with routes marked in red. This represents 40% of our import capacity. If we lose it, the family loses significant revenue and influence. I stared at the map. You're telling me people are threatening my son over shipping routes? I'm telling you that in my world, shipping routes represent millions of dollars and decades of established power. People kill for less. I sat down heavily in my desk chair. I can't do this. I can't have Owen in danger because of business deals and territory disputes. This isn't my world. It is now. Marco crouched in front of me, bringing himself to eye level. You answered a phone call. That connected you to this. I can't undo that. But I can protect you while I end the threat. And I will end it. How can you promise that? Because I have resources they don't expect me to use, alliances they don't know about, and because I'm very motivated to keep you and Owen safe. Why? The question came out sharper than I intended. Why do you care this much? I'm an employee who stumbled into something she shouldn't have. You've already done more than enough. You could send us away, give us new identities, and wash your hands of the whole situation. He was quiet for a long moment. Then, I could do that, but I won't. Because you called me when you needed help. Because you trusted me with your son's safety. Because, he stopped, because I'm not letting anyone hurt you. The intensity in his voice made something in my chest tighten. Julia cleared her throat. We should move Natalie to the Westchester house. Keep her and Owen together in one secure location until we resolve this. No, I said immediately. They both looked at me. If I disappear, they'll know I'm hiding. That makes me look guilty, scared. It tells them their threat worked. I stood. I stay visible. I keep working. I don't let them see that they've gotten to me. That's dangerous, Julia said. Everything about this is dangerous. At least this way I'm choosing my danger instead of running from it. Marco studied me. You're sure? No, but I'm choosing it anyway. Then you stay here, in the office until I say otherwise. You don't go home. You don't go anywhere without security I personally vet. Owen stays in Westchester with my mother and sister. Non-negotiable. For how long? Until I find who sent those photos and make sure they can't send any more. That night, I slept in a room on the 24th floor of the Marchesi building that I hadn't known existed. Corporate apartment, Julia called it. It had a bed, a bathroom, a small kitchen, windows that didn't open, 2 guards outside the door. I called Owen before he went to sleep. He was happy, excited about the big house and the nice ladies and the dogs they had in the yard. When are you coming, Mama? Soon, baby. Just a few days. You're having fun? Yeah, Miss Rosa taught me an Italian song. Want to hear? He sang it, off-key and enthusiastic. I closed my eyes and listened, and tried not to cry. After I hung up, I sat on the edge of the bed and stared at nothing. There was a knock at the door. I checked the peephole. Marco stood in the hallway, holding a paper bag. I opened the door. You didn't eat dinner, he said. I'm not hungry. You need to eat anyway. He came in without waiting for invitation. Set the bag on the small table. Unpacked containers of soup, bread, fruit. Eat, he said. I sat. Ate because he was watching, and because arguing felt exhausting. He sat across from me, silent. You don't have to babysit me, I said. Not babysitting. I'm making sure you're okay. I'm not okay. My son is in hiding because someone wants to use him to manipulate you. How could I possibly be okay? Fair point. We sat in silence. I ate mechanically, tasting nothing. The photo of Sofia, I said finally. Do you think it's really her? I don't know. But if it is, if she's alive somewhere, would you go to her? He looked at me directly. No. Why not? Because even if she's alive, she's not my wife anymore. She hasn't been for 5 years. Whatever we had ended when she disappeared. And whoever that woman is in the photo, whether it's Sofia or someone pretending to be her, she's part of a threat against people I care about. That makes her an enemy. People you care about, I repeated softly. Yes, like your employees. Like you and Owen. The distinction hung in the air between us. Marco, I know this is complicated. I know the timing is terrible. But I need you to know that this, you being in danger, it's not acceptable to me, not as your employer, as someone who... He stopped. As someone who cares whether you're safe. My heart was beating too fast. I can't think about this right now, I said. I can't think about what this means or what you're saying or what I might feel. I just need Owen safe. I know, and he will be, I promise. He stood, walked to the door, paused. There are guards outside. If you need anything, anything at all, you tell them. They'll call me. It's midnight. You should sleep. I'll sleep when this is over. He left. I sat alone in the corporate apartment and tried to remember what my life had been like 3 months ago, before I answered a phone that wasn't mine. The next morning, Julia appeared at 7 a.m. We found the contractor, she said. Marco is handling it now. Handling it how? Do you really want to know? I thought about Owen, about the photos, about the voice on the phone threatening to make my son disappear. No, I said. I don't. Good. It'll be over by tonight. The threat will be neutralized. And Sofia? The photo was fake. Actress hired from Prague, digitally altered to look more like Sofia. Marco's investigator found her. She's being paid to leave the country and never speak about this again. So Sofia is really dead. Probably. We'll never know for certain, but the woman in the photo isn't her. I should have felt relieved. Instead, I just felt tired. When can I see Owen? Tomorrow. Marco wants one more day to make sure all loose ends are tied up. Then you can both go back to normal life. Normal life. As if anything about this was normal. But the next day, Marco picked me up personally. Drove me to Westchester himself. Owen ran to me when I walked in the door. I held him so tightly he complained. Mama, you're squishing me. Sorry, baby. I just missed you. Rosa appeared with coffee and pastries. Julia brought Owen's things. Someone had packed them from the apartment. Marco stood near the window, watching. When Owen went to play with the dogs in the yard, Marco approached me. It's over, he said quietly. The people who sent those photos won't be sending any more. Ever. I didn't ask what that meant. Thank you, I said. You don't have to thank me. I do. You protected my son. You protected me. You. Natalie. He said my name like a complete sentence. I would do anything to keep you both safe. You know that now, right? I looked at him, at this man who'd appeared in my life by accident and changed everything. Yes, I said. I know. He nodded once. Good. 4 months later, I woke up in a bed that felt like mine. Not the apartment on East 73rd, though we still lived there. Owen in his room with the walls he'd covered in drawings, me in mine with the window that faced the morning light. But this bed, the one I'd woken up in 17 times over the past month, always early, always with the sense that I was exactly where I was supposed to be. Marco's bed. We still hadn't defined what we were doing, hadn't had the conversation about labels or expectations or what any of this meant beyond the simple fact that I slept better with him next to me, and he seemed calmer when I was close. It had started small. A month after the threat was eliminated, Marco had shown up at my apartment at midnight. I'd opened the door to find him standing there in a t-shirt and jeans I'd never seen him wear, looking exhausted in a way that had nothing to do with physical tiredness. I can't sleep, he'd said simply. I'd let him in. Made coffee neither of us drank. We'd sat on the couch and talked about nothing important until 3 a.m., when he'd fallen asleep with his head against the back cushion and I'd covered him with a blanket. He'd left before Owen woke up. Didn't mention it again. But he came back the next week, and the week after that, until it became routine. Tuesday and Friday nights, he'd appear around 10 p.m. We'd talk, or watch documentaries he chose with surprising care, or sit in comfortable silence while I read and he worked on his laptop. The first time he'd kissed me, we'd been arguing about a manuscript authentication. I'd been adamant that a supposed first edition Petrarch was a 19th century reproduction. He'd been equally certain I was wrong. You're being stubborn, I'd said. You're being obstinate, he'd countered. Those mean the same thing. Exactly my point. I'd laughed. He'd smiled, a real smile, not the careful half expression he showed most people. And then he'd kissed me. Soft. Careful, like he was afraid I'd disappear if he pushed too hard. I'd kissed him back, less carefully. We'd stood in my living room at 11 p.m. on a Friday and kissed until Owen called from his bedroom, asking for water, and Marco had pulled back with an expression somewhere between regret and relief. I should go, he'd said. Probably. But he'd come back 2 days later. And the time after that, he'd stayed until morning. Now, 4 months after someone had threatened my son, and Marco had made that threat disappear in ways I still didn't ask about, I woke up in his house in Westchester, with sunlight streaming through windows I'd learned to navigate in the dark. Marco was already awake. He always was. Early riser by habit and temperament, usually awake by 5:30, regardless of when he'd gone to sleep. I found him in the kitchen, making coffee with the precise movements of someone who'd done this 10,000 times. He wore sleep pants and nothing else, and I'd long since stopped pretending I didn't notice the way he moved. Morning, he said without turning around. How did you know I was here? Not quiet on stairs. I sat at the kitchen island, accepted the coffee he handed me. Perfect temperature, exactly the amount of cream I preferred. Owen's still asleep? I asked. Last I checked. Your mother is probably awake, though. She's always up early on Sundays. Sunday dinner had become mandatory. Every week the entire Marchesi family gathered at this house, Rosa presiding, Giulia organizing, Francesca cooking with their mother, children running everywhere. Owen had been absorbed into the chaos like he'd always belonged there. Last week, Rosa's sister had asked when the wedding was. I'd choked on wine. Marco had simply said, when Natalie decides she's ready. We hadn't discussed it. Not the wedding his family apparently assumed was inevitable, not what we were doing, not where this was going. We just existed in the present, day by day, and I was too afraid of breaking something fragile to demand definitions. You're thinking too loud, Marco said. I'm thinking at normal volume. For you, that's loud. He came around the island, stood in front of me, put his hands on either side of my legs where they dangled from the high stool. What's wrong? Nothing's wrong. I'm just thinking about how strange this all is. Strange how? Strange like 6 months ago I was cleaning houses and barely surviving, and now I'm having coffee in your kitchen on a Sunday morning while your mother is upstairs planning a wedding I haven't agreed to. Do you want to agree to it? The question was casual. The way he was looking at me was not. I don't know, I said honestly. I don't know what I want beyond what we have right now, which is good, really good, but also undefined and probably unsustainable long-term, and he kissed me, soft and slow and deliberate. When he pulled back, I'd forgotten what I was saying. We have time, he said quietly, to figure out what this is, what you want, what works for both of us. There's no rush. Your mother seems to think there's a rush. My mother thinks there's a rush for everything. Ignore her. Footsteps on the stairs. We separated automatically, still not comfortable with displays of affection in front of others, still navigating what privacy meant in a family that had none. Owen appeared in the doorway, hair sticking up, wearing pajamas Francesca had bought him that were covered in cartoon dogs. Mama, Marco, Miss Rosa says we're making pancakes, and I get to crack the eggs. That sounds messy, I said. That sounds perfect, Marco corrected. He held out his hand to Owen. Come on, I'll make sure you don't get shell in the batter. They left together. I watched them go, this man who'd entered my life by accident teaching my son how to cook breakfast, and felt something settle in my chest that had been unsettled for so long, I'd forgotten what calm felt like. Rosa appeared a moment later, hair perfect, despite the early hour. You slept well? She asked. Yes, thank you. Good, you need rest. You work too hard. She poured herself coffee. Marco is the same way, always working. But he's better now, since you. I don't think I've changed anything. You made him remember how to be human. That's everything. She sat across from me. My son was dead inside for 5 years, not literally but close enough. Since Sofia. He went through motions, ran the business, kept the family together, but there was nothing behind his eyes. I'm sorry. Don't be sorry. Be grateful you didn't know him then. He's different now, alive again. That's because of you. I didn't know what to say to that. He told me about the threat, Rosa continued, the men who came after Owen, the photos. He handled it. Yes, he did, the way he handles all threats, decisively. She met my eyes. You understand what my son is, yes? What this family is? I understand enough. And you're not afraid? I'm terrified, but not of Marco. Of losing what we have, of something happening to Owen, of making the wrong choice and breaking something good. She smiled. Then you're exactly smart enough. Fear keeps you cautious. Love makes you brave. You have both. That's good. Owen's laughter echoed from the kitchen. Something crashed. Marco's voice, patient and amused, said something I couldn't make out. He'll be a good father, Rosa said quietly, when you're ready for that. We haven't discussed. You will, when it's time. For now, drink your coffee, eat breakfast. Let my son spoil your boy and make you smile. The rest will come. She left me sitting there with half-finished coffee and a head full of thoughts I wasn't ready to examine. Breakfast was chaos. 12 people around the table, family arriving throughout the morning until the house was full of noise and warmth and the kind of belonging I thought I'd lost when Daniel died. Owen sat between Marco and Francesca, chattering about the pancakes he'd helped make, showing off the egg-cracking technique Marco had taught him. Giulia leaned over to me. He's good with kids. I always forget that until I see it. He's patient. He's patient with Owen. With most kids, he's terrifying. She speared a piece of fruit. But Owen makes him soft. You both do. I don't think Marco does soft. He didn't used to. Now? She gestured to where Marco was cutting Owen's pancakes into precise squares. That's soft. After breakfast, the men took the children outside. Some tradition about teaching them soccer that I suspected was really just an excuse to run off excess energy. I helped clean up with Rosa and Francesca and Julia, falling into the rhythm of Sunday routine that had somehow become mine. David Harper took a plea deal, Julia mentioned casually while drying dishes. 18 months for fraud. Won't be eligible to petition for custody for 7 years after release. I nearly dropped the plate I was washing. How do you know that? We keep track of threats. He was a threat. Now he's not. She set down the dish towel. Marco wanted you to know it's handled. Permanently. Did Marco? No. David really was committing fraud. Multiple counts. We just made sure the district attorney had excellent evidence and motivation to prosecute. She smiled. Sometimes justice works exactly as it should, with a little help. I should have been disturbed by that. Should have questioned the ethics of using connections to ensure legal outcomes. Instead, I just felt relieved. Thank you, I said. Don't thank me. Thank Marco. He's the one who spent 3 months building an airtight case. That evening, after everyone had left, and Owen was asleep in the room that had slowly become his whenever we stayed in Westchester, I found Marco in his study. He was reading something on his laptop, glasses on. I'd learned he only wore them when he was tired, too vain to use them in public. I knocked on the open doorframe. He looked up, removed the glasses. Everything okay? Julia told me about David. Ah, you didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. He was a loose end. Loose ends are dangerous. I walked into the study, closed the door behind me. When does it end? The protection, the handling threats, the making sure I'm safe. Never. He said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. I don't stop protecting people I care about. And what am I, exactly? He was quiet for a long moment. Then he stood, walked over to where I was standing. What do you want to be? I want to be someone who gets to make her own choices, who doesn't need constant protection, who can stand on her own. You are that person. You've always been that person. I'm not protecting you because you're weak. I'm protecting you because you're important to me, and because I can. Important how? He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind my ear. His hand lingered against my jaw. You know how, he said quietly. I want to hear you say it. Why? Because I'm terrified that I'm imagining this, that I've built up something in my head that doesn't exist, and one day I'll wake up, and you'll realize I'm just the maid who answered your phone, and you'll be done with this experiment. His expression shifted. Something that might have been hurt flickered across his face. Is that what you think this is? An experiment? I don't know what this is. You've never said. Because I thought it was obvious. He pulled me closer. I love you. I'm in love with you. I have been since you stood in that courthouse and cried because you were terrified of losing Owen, and I realized I'd do anything to keep you both safe. I thought you knew. The words hit me like cold water. You've never said it before. I've shown you. Every day, every meal I brought, every time I made sure you were safe, every Sunday dinner with my family, treating you like you already belong. I thought that was clear. I needed the words. Then here are the words. I love you. I want you in my life permanently. I want Owen to be my son in every way that matters. I want to wake up with you every morning and go to sleep with you every night. I want all of it, all of you, for as long as you'll let me have it. I kissed him. Hard, desperate, like I was trying to prove something to both of us. He kissed back with the same intensity, hands in my hair, body pressed against mine, everything we'd been holding back for months, finally released. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing hard. I love you too, I said. I've been too afraid to say it, too afraid you'd change your mind, or I'd wake up and this would all be gone. But I love you. Completely. Then stop being afraid. He rested his forehead against mine. I'm not going anywhere. Neither are you. We're done with fear. That's a nice thought. It's a promise. We stood there in his study, holding each other until my phone buzzed. Owen, texting from the room upstairs where he'd finally figured out how to use the iPad Marco had given him. Can Marco read me a story? I showed Marco the message. He smiled. He knows I'm a better storyteller than you. He absolutely does not know that. Only one way to find out. We went upstairs together. Marco read Owen 3 books, in voices that made my son laugh until he hiccuped. When Owen finally fell asleep, Marco stayed sitting on the edge of the bed for a long moment, just watching him. He's a good kid, Marco said quietly. He is. I meant what I said, about wanting him to be mine. I know. Is that something you'd want, eventually? I thought about Owen calling him Marco, not Dad, about how easily my son had integrated into this family, about how much safer and happier he was than he'd been 6 months ago. Yes, I said. Eventually, when he's ready, when we're all ready. Marco nodded, stood, took my hand. We walked to his bedroom together. Our bedroom, really, though I still sometimes thought of it as his. In the dark, he pulled me close. "You're safe," he whispered. "Owen is safe. We're building something good here. You believe that?" "Yes." "Then stop waiting for it to end. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. This is real. We're real." I wanted to believe him, wanted to trust that life could actually be this good without some hidden cost. "Okay," I said finally. "I'll try. That's all I'm asking." We fell asleep like that, tangled together, his heartbeat steady under my ear, the sound of Owen breathing in the room down the hall. 3 months later, Rosa stopped asking about the wedding and started planning it instead. I didn't stop her. 6 months after that, on a Sunday afternoon with the entire Marchesi family gathered in the Westchester house, Marco asked Owen if it would be okay if he became his dad officially. Owen thought about it for exactly 3 seconds before saying yes. Marco cried. Actually cried. Silent tears he wiped away quickly, but they were there. I cried too, less quietly. The wedding happened in the spring. Small, just family. Owen stood between us during the ceremony, holding both our hands. When the priest said we were married, Owen whispered, "Does this mean I get to call him Dad now?" "Yes, baby, that's exactly what it means." Owen looked up at Marco. "Okay, Dad." Marco picked him up, held him close, looked at me over our son's head with an expression that said everything he'd already told me and everything he'd promised. We were safe. We were loved. We were family. And for the first time in longer than I could remember, I believed it would last. The business card, the one Marco had given me that first day, the one I'd kept in a drawer for 3 weeks before calling, sat in a small frame on my dresser now. A reminder of where we'd started, of a phone call I shouldn't have answered, of a man who'd protected me when I needed it most, of a life I'd built from broken pieces into something whole. I used to think safety meant being invisible, small, unnoticed. I thought if I didn't ask for anything, life couldn't take anything else away. But safety isn't silence. It's not hiding. It's this. A man who answers the phone on the first ring. A family that sets a place for you at the table without being asked. A child who sleeps soundly because he knows he's protected. I answered a phone I shouldn't have touched, and it gave me everything I didn't know I needed.